All right. Good morning. So, thank you for that introduction, Emily. I gotta be honest, this is definitely outside of my comfort zone. I would never have anticipated doing something like this. And I appreciate all of you guys being here this morning and taking the time to hear me ramble or stumble on my words. And I wish this space was full of dogs. It would make it just way better this morning. So, before we kind of dive in, I guess I'll just kind of, you already did a good summary of my background, so we'll just jump in, or dive in, and we'll look at some work just to give you kind of a frame of reference, and then we'll move forward. So here's some bottle designs I was able to do for Grand Rapids Brewing Company when I worked for Barfly, and then some wedding invites for a friend, or a few friends. I really enjoy, creating things of longevity and contributing to my friends' special day, their life events, and being a part of their story. So anytime I have the opportunity to do invitations, I definitely try to make time for it. And then moving forward, mural that I was able to do with Elliot Chaltry in Hopcat, Port St. Lucie, Florida. A 1,400 square foot plus monster in the last month of construction. Definitely presented its own challenges and fun, if you can imagine. So, but it was a great opportunity, and I think that it was really fun to work with Elliot on that project. Even the trip back when we were completely zombies and so forth. So, and then the bottom is Hopcat East Beltline, a month worth of work of stapling 50,000 bottle caps to a wall and dreaming of little pings of every time a staple or bottle cap dropped and hit the floor. So that was kind of nerve-wracking as well. And then 20 Monroe Live mural. Had the opportunity to work with Gilmore Collection when they had a call for entry shortly after they opened the space. And I think it was going to be a part of Art Prize, but I kind of missed the bill, and so I think Nick Nordier, another artist, and myself were able to, lend itself to the space and kind of create, an environment with our work, which was cool. And then Mud Penny, which, if none of you know what Mud Penny is, you should, because it's great food, great coffee, and absolutely great people. And I was fortunate enough that they reached out to me and allowed me to complement their already beautiful space with some creative juices. And then Graydon's Crossing, some of you guys may have seen on the way in here or before, but that was a really fun project that I had the opportunity to work with Hannah Berry this summer during Crescent After Dark. Utilizing grant money to contribute to community and beautification efforts and really kind of bring aesthetic appeal to different areas, or at least just this one in Crescent. So that was really exciting. And and then on the bottom is Hopcat Louisville, which was a mural as a result of a space that was not kind of being utilized, and this was a pivot point for Barfly and Hopcat at the time, and how do we improve traffic in that area. So they actually turned it into a game room, and they had a wall that was that's where the bar actually was, so they're just do something with the space, and that was also a nerve-wracking week, and I left in a rush with all my paint and materials still there because I was finishing in the last hour to then catch a flight to come back home. So they're really challenging time frames that I've worked in, but nonetheless very valuable as it relates to my own growth and experiences. And then lastly, some projects that kind of are outside of my comfort zone and what I normally do, based on how I kind of tend to be two-dimensional, and these were just ideas that I had that Hopcat and Barfly really facilitated and allowed me to have that freedom to investigate and learn new things and learning to weld in a matter of 30 minutes to create this 700-pound sculpture to be hung up on a wall above diners. I don't know, a lot of concern there. So I don't know if I really want to be known for maybe what could happen, but luckily it's still on the wall and it hasn't fell down. So yeah, that's some work, and we will jump into this. So I think, loss is this thing that we kind of all experience, is very relatable, especially as creatives. Like me up here, this entire, when I was invited to talk, where do I start? I was lost the entire way. I'm still lost to how I'm going to deliver this message to you, but we're going to try. So, it's something that's all too common, and, we're often asking ourselves, what's next? Where am I going? Or what am I even doing when we come to these moments of standstill and this internal dialogue that we all struggle with? And, you kind of just, have to cringe and smile while you're in those moments of loss, because it's like, I need to be productive and I need to make some progress, but what the hell is going on? And you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Especially when you're dealing with people that don't get the process, or they don't get it, and they're kind of assholes, and you're like, great, thank you, I appreciate you too. So it's just it's this way. It's a way to kind of just prevent yourself from slipping down this slope into a state of anxiety. So, and I think it really kind of occurs when we encounter these defeating variables as creatives, and these pain points that arise when our wants or our needs aren't necessarily being satisfied at that time. So it really forces us to kind of stop and reevaluate, and however these points manifest themselves, if we don't reassess and kind of steer our ship in the direction of passion or truth or intention, then we kind of move into the direction of just being in this lost state and kind of at a standstill or roadblocks. And so I've been able to really observe that experience and learn firsthand, not only myself, but then through observing others' experiences and listening to their trials and tribulations. And it's really kind of allowed me to gain, maybe a deeper perspective, and which oftentimes these variables are kind of self-induced and they really repeat themselves. It's a cycle, and if we don't be attentive to it, then that cycle is just ongoing. And so some of these variables I think include, first and foremost, being overwhelmed by the possibilities, when you dive into a project. Personally, anytime that I have an opportunity to do something, I'm really excited and super amped with all the multiple directions that the project could take shape. And it's great, but also it's kind of preventative, because I don't know where to start and how do I begin. So it definitely doesn't contribute to a smooth process, but it just kind of it's unnecessary time spent of worrying about where to go, So that's pretty common for me. Not feeling adequate enough, I think as creatives, it's a go-to location in our mind of self-doubt and second-guessing our choices, and really being concerned about how it's going to be received or what direction to take due to that reception. So it's just inherently just kind of pauses us and doesn't really allow us to make any active strides towards the goal. Comparing ourselves to others and our work, I think is kind of instinctive, I think that based on our society and just being in this kind of being concerned with what everyone's doing, competition, learning and growing and being inspired, it's great, and you're focusing on a lot of good things and you're learning, but you're also, if you're comparing yourself, then you're really just you're preventing yourself from being more intentional with you, and you're letting that kind of define you and dictate you of how to move forward. So it just kind of cripples your progress and demotivates almost to I'm not there yet. Why is that person succeeding or killing it, and why I'm just not good enough, and so then you just stop, or what have you. Held back by circumstances. Beyond my own familiarity with this, I think that this is probably the most common thing that I encounter just when talking to others. Like elements in your life, like marriage or a relationship, or not marriage. Marriage is great, okay? I'm not married. I didn't mean to say marriage, but like negative relationships, like health or family. Nice. Those factors that kind of like really make you just disheartened and or feel unmotivated because you feel like you are confined to those circumstances and don't really, feel like you can get out. And so most times they're the most challenging to kind of overcome. And then expectation for perfection is definitely the one that I struggle with the most, just based on, it's just, I allow my ego kind of to dictate my own expectations of what the project should be or how it should go, and it just ultimately just frustrates me and sends me into this stagnant state, which ultimately I think lends itself to kind of substantial creative damage and just doesn't allow you to really flourish and grow upon in the process. So, obviously you feel very defeated when you encounter these variables, and these are obviously the ones that I kind of, experienced firsthand and scratched the surface for sure. They're few of many, but I think that I brought these today just in hopes to kind of maybe present a different way to perceive those variables, and then how you might be able to navigate from this like state of loss and towards a more state of intention. And like before I go into maybe some walkthroughs, I definitely want to highlight like the silver lining though that exists when you're in this state of loss, because I think that there is a ton of value in a positive way that could impact how you approach your work moving forward. So the first thing is it's temporary. It comes and goes. It's like this unwanted guest that shows up and like unannounced, and it stays for as long as you allow it to. But while temporary, that guest can definitely have its own baggage, which is like unnecessary and disruptive to the process, but can also bring some like, Christmas presents that we all like really love and are excited about. So, I think it allows for exploration and potential. Through this feeling, I think we're being able to be fluid in your process, being able to wipe the slate clean and start over, and not being dictated by certain aspects. Conquer new mediums, gain a new perspective, essentially just kind of like discovering some, uncharted territory, I think is pretty important. But I think, most importantly, I think just like the growth that comes from being lost and being able to like re-examine your passions, your path, and your plans, and like reevaluating your dreams. And if those dreams are actually your dreams, or are they someone else's dreams, or are they someone else's expectations and opinions? And ultimately, like while loss is never like a welcomed guest, it's usually a cherished one at least, or you can find benefit in it being here. And I may age myself, I'm not sure, but I keep on going back to National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation with Cousin Eddie, and like how he shows up unannounced and is just like a big bag of chaos, and it disrupts Clark's like entire dream of what Christmas should be, and it's just ultimately like puts Clark in a position where he is just so over it and associates so much negativity with him. But then like at the end of the day, it forces Clark to realize like there is a lot of value or it forces Clark to refocus his values and realize, well, regardless of the baggage Eddie brings, it's still a valued part of your family, and having these like true intentional moments of like, let's pivot from what doesn't matter to what does matter. So, yeah, that's a great movie if you haven't seen it. It's a great movie. So if we like should respect it for what it is and like utilize it to move forward, what does that look like? So circling back to the variables and just to highlight some growth that I've learned to take value in when dealing with each of these. So when it comes to being overwhelmed by possibilities, I encourage you to embrace the unknown and find beauty in the uncertainty. Having the ability and the opportunity to really explore and dive into so many different paths, or have like 1,000 artboards open in Illustrator and like really just get super crazy with your brain and allow it to just like run wild is awesome. And if you have that opportunity, definitely take advantage of it. And also like evaluate what brings you the most fulfillment and happiness. Like, don't do things that are for others. Do things that are for you if it's applicable. Like, I get it, if you're working for a client or doing a particular project or limited by a certain time frame, I understand. But if that exists to be explorative, take the advantage and really just be curious. But if those parameters do exist with like time and certain clients' expectations, then use that as a tool to navigate from. Those are the parameters to kind of help you be more constructive and progressive in your process. So like, don't be dismayed by them. Just use them to help you move forward. If you're not feeling, or if you're feeling inadequate, it's okay. We all do. Like, we all self-doubt ourselves. It's something that is inherent and kind of like second nature to the human condition. So I think that just realize that it's part of the process. And remember, just trust yourself, and like, it's a journey. So obviously, just as a captain is kind of like preparing for a journey through uncharted territory, like, he has to trust his ability, he has to trust his skill, his gut, his ship to like reach the destination. And he understands that there is risks and challenges involved, but if you get dismayed by those challenges, then it's always going to prevent you. So just embrace those challenges, look forward, and try to move fearlessly through them, and knowing that your work, what you've done, and your energy is valuable, and always has been. Comparing ourselves, all too common, but I think that it definitely has a stifling effect on our work and ourselves and our energy. It continues to drive that wound of self-doubt and just forcing us to become stagnant in our work, and it just really holds us back from fulfilling the creative experience. So just don't get distracted by it. More or less, reroute that time and energy that you would focus comparing yourself to others, and just like put that and reinvest that into yourself, and use that to develop. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but I encourage you to kind of adopt the notion also that we all achieve more when we work together, and instead of comparing, maybe invest in the idea of connecting and collaborating. I found that when I have the opportunity to support my friends, or anybody rather that has dreams or goals or passions, and like, if I have the tools to provide, or if I have a network to facilitate, like, I really kind of cherish that ability to provide, I guess, because I don't know, I'm not only doing my life, like, we're all on our paths, but cool, now we're a part of someone else's journey, and we're making a positive impact. And so, like, how could that not be one of the most rewarding feelings? And then if you're held by circumstances, don't identify with them. I think we limit ourselves to our circumstances, and I think in doing so, our perceived potential will never really exceed those boundaries, and it really limits us and the maximum that we could possibly achieve. And it's just the easiest way to talk yourself out of your own dreams is identifying with the external and not really embracing like the internal and what makes you tick, I guess, if you will. So your challenges are definitely, or your circumstances are definitely the challenges that you should utilize and grow from. And then lastly, if you're like me and consistently experience this need or expectation of being perfect and what perfect looks like, I'm gonna try and give you a little walkthrough as far as like how I'm learning to deal with this and how to maybe grow away from it. Expectations, especially driven by ego, push us to fear failure. And when we fear failure, we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to, or the excitement of exploring and changing our perspective or learning or doing new things. So it keeps us in that comfort zone, and really we wear that safety blanket throughout. And it doesn't lend itself to being dynamic or, yeah, I said it. So, like, I think dropping your ego as a creative is kind of similar to cutting your own limb off, where, it's kind of used as our shield, our first line of defense as it relates to protecting our craft, our skill, or our work. It protects us by providing this illusion that fear is unacceptable, or failure is unacceptable. So personally, I think I've allowed that illusion to kind of exist and manifest over time as it relates to painting. Throughout most of my college career and, my, I guess, artistic career, I have always been really engaged and excited about learning new things and experiencing new mediums, and I'm just like that ADD kid. I'm just so, I am ADD, so there you go. But I do get so excited because I'm like, oh, awesome, I'm such a curious person. So, in that moment, I think that, well, let me rewind. So, being that curious person, I've always had just an inherent joy of just creating, but always put painting on this pedestal. And for the longest time, I never really understood it or considered it, and kind of was just intimidated by what I thought painting should be. And I think it also is mainly based on my own fear of failure, and not seeing any value in failure and what can come from failure. And I really didn't want to fail my own subconscious standards and expectations that I had for myself that I created, which was completely irrational fear, and I let that dictate my decisions. And so essentially robbing myself of any potential opportunities. So once I acknowledged, or once I wanted to get into the mural game and kind of go for it and try it out, I realized well, obviously you gotta learn to paint. And so after acknowledging that, I was well, it allowed me to investigate and realize that reality and what I was doing and the constructs that I was creating in my head, and I was just letting this fear of failing based on what I thought it should be prevent me from even trying it. So, that pissed me off. I was why am I letting this control my decisions? So, I started painting, and by all means, I'm no professional. I have weird processes, and I'm not a Picasso, and I make mistakes all the time, but the glory is when you make mistakes, when you're painting, you can just paint over them and continue on. And so it's cool. I could have figured that one out from the beginning and been a hell of a lot farther than where I am now. So, yeah. So, if loss is kind of this collaboration between possibility and uncertainty, I feel I've learned that ego, for me, is probably the most threatening force that exists. So, to wrap it up, I would just say that lost is this complex state. It can really make us feel stagnant or keep us wandering. And if we push ourselves to seek why lost is happening, then and peel back the layers of what's making us feel lost, then we can essentially use that as a tool or asset to continue to grow creatively and to self-develop. So Yeah, with that, I'm gonna just thanks Hannah, Lions and Rabbits, thanks Ferris, keeping us awake, Creative Mornings for the opportunity, Leandro, go to his show tonight, 7, beer, food, music, and that's it, thank you.